let's get to some potential trade ideas. Yossi, we're going to start in New Orleans. Jose Alvarado, a guy who the Knicks have had interest in. I don't know what New Orleans plans are for him, but I assume New Orleans is going to be open to moving him at the deadline or ahead of the deadline, and so I think the Knicks will have a shot here. When you look at Jose's salary, how can the Knicks make the math work here?
So with Jose and some of these other players making like around the minimum or a little more, it's no coincidence that the Knicks are going after players making that low money because that would help them with fielding a deep roster this year and potentially next year, maybe the year after. So they could acquire some of these guys that they've been linked to, and including Jose Alvarado. I've got them with 9 second-round picks right now. That includes that Wizards first round pick that's probably going to become 2 seconds because it's the top 8 protection. So once that becomes 2 seconds, they got 9 second-round picks to trade. The going rate for premium role players in recent years has been like 3, 4, maybe 5 first round picks. So they can get him. As far as making the money work, they can do it straight up with Gershon Yabusele. They could do 2 minimum salaries, like if they wanted to do Clarkson and Shamit, just as an example, or Daddy A and Clarkson. That's just another way they could make the money work. I would imagine most likely it's going to involve Yabusele just because he's been the player that seems like most likely to get moved from the Knicks. That would save them a little bit more apron space, so then they could sign a 15th player as well.
Yeah, there's optionality there, and then you talk about another Pelican who Michael Scotto was on the Putback last week, and he mentioned that he'd heard the Knicks had interest or checked in on Yves Missi, the big man. If you wanted Yves Missi in the deal, is that similar to Alvarado? Is it kind of the same cast of characters with the Knicks?
Same thing. He makes a little bit less, so they could even send out less salaries. So as an example, if they were able to get both guys, they could structure the trade as Yabusele for Alvarado, and then they could do a combination of Dadier and one other minimum salary player for Missi. And Missi would be great for the Knicks, and mainly if he can, I anticipate wherever he goes, he's going to be a little more productive. But even if he could just be a reliable backup playing like 12 to 16 minutes a night, that's a huge win, especially when you consider he's still got 2 more years left on his rookie scale contract. So if he actually becomes a reliable rotation player, that's super valuable for the Knicks given their cap situation.
Yeah, it's interesting because you talk about the backup minutes that Missy would give them, and then you're talking about essentially taking Mitchell Robinson's role. And you think if you're trading for Missy, it has to have a domino effect. And Robinson being a free agent, being extension eligible, but there's been no extension reached to this point. I don't think there will be. It's just an interesting dynamic there with the Knicks, at least checking in on a center. A lot of due diligence is done this time of year. Just because they checked in doesn't mean they're making a hard push for him to replace Mitchell Robinson. In fact, I don't think the Knicks have any. Well, I know they have very little desire to do anything with Mitchell Robinson other than keep him on the court. He's been one of the most important Knicks for this team to date. And so I think any trade involving Mitchell Robinson would be a massive swing. I don't think it would be for an Alvarado and a Misi. It would be for a bigger piece, a bigger star. He'd be part of a package because the Knicks, I don't think, have any appetite to move him based on how important he's been to them to this point. And
Yeah,
also,
I just want to add to that. Yeah,
yeah,
no, I 100% agree. If they bring in a big man like Yves Missi, I don't think that has any immediate impact on Mitchell Robinson's future. What if Yves Missi is just no good? They'd have to bring him in. They'd have to see if he actually could play. And even if he can, he's probably not going to take Mitchell Robinson's spot in the playoffs. They're going to need Mitchell Robinson in the playoffs. So he'd be a good injury insurance for the short term. But I think they still need Mitch for now. That's maybe more of a long term play. If Missi can be just as good, maybe not just as good, but if he can like really take a lot of minutes next year, okay, then that's maybe when the Knicks could consider maybe moving Mitchell Robinson. But I think it's too early to make any type of judgment just because they might bring in another center.
Yeah, I see it that way too. And when you talk about also the players that they have interest in or on their radar, we talked last week, I think, about um, Naji Marshall, Dallas. Obviously, he came into the Garden that night that Dallas blew the Knicks out, and he was fantastic. And so I think in a perfect world, depending on the price, the Knicks would want to jump on acquiring Najee, but I'm sure it would take a significant amount to get him from Dallas, just as we were talking earlier about New Orleans and the players that would go out. I would assume New Orleans is holding out for draft compensation as well, in the form of second rounders, multiple second rounders, for the players we mentioned. But in terms of Marshall, salary matching purposes, how could the Knicks do it?
It's interesting. It feels like Marshall might be playing this well against the Knicks. Maybe he wants to be there. Maybe he's trying to show off for them. And he's the type of guy I think the Knicks have needed since they did the Carl Anthony Towns trade and they traded DiVincenzo. Not that he's like DiVincenzo, they're different players, but they've needed another bigger wingish player to be in their rotation. And at his $9 million salary, that's kind of the absolute most money the Knicks could trade for without dipping into their top six guys, meaning they could keep their starters and Mitchell Robinson. So they could make a deal for Naji Marshall by combining all of Gershon Yabusele, Pacome Dadier, and one more minimum salary. The bigger question is how do they make the value? How do they satisfy Dallas? Because out of all the guys we mentioned, I feel like he's probably the most valuable, just based on his positional scarcity. I think he could really change, impact the playoff series for the Knicks a lot more than some of these other guys. And he's got a good contract. He's got another year left on this contract, making around 9 million. So I've seen some reporting that the Mavericks are going to hold out for a first round pick. I'm kind of skeptical they'll actually get that, and if they do, it might not be a super valuable one. So would the Mavericks settle for like 5 second round picks for Najee Marshall? Maybe a pick swap? I The Knicks could definitely do that. Keep in mind the Mavericks, I'm looking at their draft pick situation. They only have 2 second round picks right now. So if it would make sense to restock on them. I don't think that's a terrible deal for them at all. So we'll see. But the biggest thing so far is that the Knicks can't really get all of these guys. If they get Marshall, I don't know if they I doubt they'd have enough salary matching and draft picks left over to get another one of these other guys like Alvarado or Missi. So that's the only other thing to keep in mind. Getting Marshall could make it much more difficult to upgrade the rest of the bench a little more.
And excuse me, if you put Daniel Gafford into that equation, he's a guy where is his salary at that point where you would have to trade, a Josh Hart, a Mitchell Robinson, somebody in your top six.
Let's see. I haven't thought about Gafford to be honest, but I think let's see, 14. So can they get there? Like technically they could do like maybe a 5 for 1, but that just seems untenable. I think at that point, then yeah, you probably are having to trade one of your other guys. I could see Gafford being an option if they're as part of something bigger, like if they were to trade for Giannis, or just someone else making a lot of money and they got to send out multiple guys. Then if they still have money left over to bring in a guy like Gafford, that's where it could make a little more sense. I don't know what it really does for either team if there's like a Mitchell Robinson for Daniel Gafford type swap. So that's how I could see Gafford coming back if it's a part of a bigger deal.